Hello there, I'm Tim and he's John, and this is How to Murder Time, a podcast about games and things.
Hello everybody.
Watcher.
We return.
I haven't really been doing many games lately. This is summer, I think.
It's awfully hot to be playing games.
It's the summer thing. So hopefully you've played some games anyway.
Okay, I'm going to talk about a game to start with.
Yes.
I'm going to talk about a game called Inside.
Inside?
Do you remember Limbo?
Limbo, no.
The black and white game where you're this little kid walking along and there was the awful spider deaths.
Vaguely. It sounded like an indie thing that probably wouldn't have caught my interest and imagination.
Well, this is their latest one, which has taken them a bazillion years to write. And in this one, you're a little kid walking from right to left.
Yeah.
But there are no spiders.
No spiders? Okay.
And it's got more colour.
Right. So, yeah, low on spiders, high on colour.
Yeah. So the idea of this game basically is you're walking from left to right, you have to solve some very, very simple puzzles, and you're taking in the atmosphere, taking in the world, and enjoying the scenery as you go along. And then stuff starts to happen, and more stuff's revealed, and more mechanics are revealed, and then something happens at the end.
So were we saying puzzle platformer, or shouldn't I really be thinking in these terms of narrow pigeonholes?
I think that a puzzle platformer is being a little too generous. There's only a couple of times where it turns into a puzzle platformer. Most of the time, it is basically walk right, up until the point when it becomes walk left for a bit.
Stroll past some background art simulator.
At one point, it makes you walk left for a bit to the point where you think, are they making a statement with me now walking left? And it turns out no, because you then start walking right again.
How can walking left or right in a sideways 2D game be a statement?
That is the problem with the
Is that
game.
plot
Because I
spoilers?
can't really explain it without there being massive spoilers.
Okay, yeah. It sounds very arty.
It's very arty, but it's
Yeah.
very, very good. It only takes 4 or 5 hours to play.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those games.
Yeah.
And it's very, very good. Apart from the fact that I really enjoyed the first bit.
Yeah.
Then it got really, really tedious. There was too many bits, like there's a bit where there's a strong wind blowing.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to get between cover when the wind's not blowing. And it's very, very well timed.
Oh, timing exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's one where you have to move something around, and it was a pain in the arse, and I hated it. And at that point, I really hated the game. So I started the game loving it. Then halfway through, I really despised the game with every fibre of my being.
Yeah. It sounds like it doesn't know what it wants to be.
Yeah. And then towards the end,
Yeah.
there is something involving leg animation, which means I think it's the best game ever made.
Right, okay.
And I can't say what that leg animation is, but if you're a bit squeamish, do not play.
That's quite a roller coaster by the
It
sounds of
is.
things.
And only
Yeah.
in a couple of hours. I was very surprised.
Hmm.
But no, it's a game which generally is interesting. It has something to say, but I don't know if it knows what it is. You're in this...
Yeah, see, this is exactly the kind of faff that makes me sternly frown at indie games, because they try to be art and often lose what it is to be a game.
You're in this hellish future type place where there are these people around who you control by putting a hat on.
Okay.
And then they do your movements.
See, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting for a couple of puzzles.
Yeah.
And then stuff happens, and it's never really clear what they're trying to say with the game. And you can say that the whole point is, it's just all being very, very out there and very, very vague. So you get to make your mind up as to what it all means. But I think there has to be a bit more meat on the bones there for a narrative for you to think, yes, you have thought this through, rather than this is a string of really neat ideas that you put together saying, the player will figure it out.
I think they're crediting us with far more intelligence than we've got, to be
I
honest.
think they're possibly being a bit lazy. I think it needs a bit more than it's got. Because it really does need to... It's got lots of interesting ideas, but you don't know when you see an idea whether that's an actual proper idea, a throwaway idea, or just something you've read into it which doesn't exist.
Yeah. So you end up... It sort of tricks you into doing your own work in building up what the game is, because they've not really done much at all.
And that does smack of cheating to me, because if I build up in my mind as being something fantastic, I've done their work for them.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. So, I don't know, how much of a game do you actually want? How defined do you want it all to be? Does it want to be, I mean, your sort of typical cover-based, third-person, story-based shooter, walk down a corridor, pick up power-ups, and then find out that the mission control voice was actually the villain all along. You know, that kind of extremely overproduced narrative experience doesn't leave a lot of room for we, the player, to make our own entertainment in there. But then, if we want that, surely we're off to Minecraft or Space Engineers or sandboxes in general. If we want to make a story entirely of our own devising and just play let's pretend, play imagination, why does there need to be any kind of platformer game there at all?
Oh no, it needs to be there because it's still a game. But I think the problem is if you've got a nice film which is a bit ambiguous, it definitely does a lot more guiding towards the ambiguous. It's not enough of a structure in there. It just doesn't make There's a language in cinema. If you're going to do something ambiguous, that you have to have a certain amount of stuff in there, point people down lines, and give them dead ends to go down and things.
It's something I tolerate, and I say tolerate. I'm not sure if I enjoy particularly, but it's certainly reading books or watching films or whatever. Then that's a spectating experience, a passive experience, and part of the the opportunities for discussion and chat about the thing is what did you make of it, and if there's different ways to interpret it, then that's quite an interesting thing to chat about afterwards. But does that apply to participatory experiences?
It
does that
definitely
work for games?
No, you can do it perfectly with games. I think in this case,
come out at the end of it and say, "Oh, what did you think that was about?" And then you can have a big old chat.
You can do it. Take the Blade Runner game.
Yeah,
that has so many endings you don't entirely know what's going on.
Well, that had so many endings that it was very difficult to come up with a definitive shared experience of what that actually was. That's the problem.
And a lot of games have slightly ambiguous bits in them, but this is just too ambiguous. It doesn't have enough in there to get. I
think there's a difference between ambiguous and unexplained.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, and a film would never get away with being just completely unexplained in this way.
See, I think ambiguous counts when the creator of the work meant it to be ambiguous. Thought out how both possible interpretations or more, how all the different possible interpretations happen on purpose. They're not just things that, I didn't think about that. That's really cool. Yeah, I'll say that was what I thought all along. There's sort of the difference between just not really doing the work and not getting it right.
Or even if they just don't mention that one important fact at the end.
Yeah.
The Blade Runner case is perfect on that. It's all set up all the way through to look like it could be.
Things could go either way,
but
I greatly respect and admire things, things where that's done on purpose. But I'm very suspicious and distrustful of things where people have done that by accident and didn't really think it through at all. Anyway, because that anyone can just throw 8 random concepts into a story and then not and then just leave it for the reader to do the real work, as you say.
Yeah,
that's not skillful. Skillful is having multiple stories that any of them could be the real story and doing that on purpose from the start.
I think that's exactly it. Just like with Limbo before it's not as clever as it thinks. It's trying to be way more clever than
accidentally clever, or worse still, made clever by the participation of the player.
Yeah, and I think everyone's fawning over it, saying it's fantastic, and look at it, it's already ambiguous.
Is that also because a lot of people just don't want to turn around and go, well, I thought it was stupid?
Well, no, I think the problem is...
They don't want to be seen to not get it. They don't want to be seen to be lowbrow about
these things. No, I think the problem is there's not enough of this stuff. So when we get a scrap thrown our way, it appears so much better than it is.
It's surprisingly few games that leave any kind of open-ended ambiguity to stories and stuff. It's always very, very sort of straightforward 3-act structure, nailed narratives.
Yeah, and I think that we're so desperate, or some people are so desperate for that kind of thing, that they will grab hold of any time it comes along and embrace it fully, and I think that's maybe
and perhaps make more of it than is really there.
And I don't think in this case it really helps, because I don't think they've learnt the important lessons from Limbo in their new game.
So remind me about Limbo then. That was essentially something similar?
Limbo was you were off looking for your sister or something through this weird black and white world.
Yeah, so for highly stylised art direction.
And this is quite stylised as well.
Yeah, in a similar sort of fashion, I suppose. But did Limbo work better as a game? Does this work well as a game?
I thought Limbo worked better as a game, but I also thought that Inside worked better as an experience. The atmosphere in Inside was way better than Limbo, I thought, because it has this sort of it's got that Soviet bloc feel with everything. It's that future where everyone's put down and run down, and it's raining constantly at the start.
Sort of a dystopian setting there.
There's literal slavery, but you don't know where the slaves come from. Are they created? Are they made slaves?
See, that sounds interesting to me already. I mean, just sort of being... I love books and films and games where you're dumped unceremoniously into an utterly alien world and then have to figure out what the hell's going on, what's the surroundings, what's the society, why am I here, all this sort of thing. Those sorts of ontological mysteries are fantastic.
That's one of the things I really loved with Remember Me, if you remember. It just puts you up at the start, and it's a fantastic world.
Yeah, you're in the punishment factory, about to have your brain zapped, and what the hell? How do I get here? What's going on? And it all kicks off from there. And you gradually have more of the world sort of explained and revealed to you as the character goes through their own journey. And that's a fantastic sort of dual way to deliver a narrative.
Yeah,
you deliver the setting and the backstory to the reader at the same time you're putting the main character through their own personal journey, and that's very rewarding. I like that.
Yeah, so I'm at that weird position where I recommend people play Inside if you like that kind of thing.
I think it's great that there are games like this,
but it's not as good as it needs to be, and we need to make better games than it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've got the traditional computer game format nailed so well now that we're in a position where the genre as a whole can afford to have all these weird outlying experiences as well. Things like, everyone's gone to the Rapture and Dear Esther. You tried that on a Spectrum back in the day, or in the early days of the Amiga or whatever. You probably wouldn't get away with that kind of thing. I mean, do you remember Another World?
Yes.
Yeah, Delphine. Yeah, everyone remembers that. That was an example of a utterly out there, totally left field computer game of its time. And nowadays, that's a very sort of conventional kind of experience. And the outliers, the weird sort of fringe stuff we're getting, is really quite. I don't know, it starts to push the boundaries of the genre. Yeah, exactly, which is what we need. But obviously not all of them are going to work. Not all of them are going to be the way the whole genre is going to go. Some of these sort of side ideas will just wither off, I suppose.
Well, these games are very much Another World. They are that idea writ large.
Just some sort of really, astonishing...
Yeah, gorgeous looking.
Yeah.
Lovely animation.
And very imaginative.
Just let you get on with it.
Yeah. But... I don't know. It's like you say. We keep coming back to this lack of having an expansive enough language to be able to discuss this stuff. I think. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, we keep borrowing cinema terms, we keep borrowing book terms and stuff. But computer games are a cutting edge medium, and they're always going to be developing forwards.
The pure interactiveness of it alone means it's impossible to look at it in the same light.
How can we then discuss or recommend or talk to other people about what we've experienced when it's all just completely new?
Insight has zero decisions to make. It is purely go from A to B and get there following the prescribed thing.
I mean,
there's absolutely zero player interaction.
A lot of people get very reductive about this sort of thing, and I'm guilty of it myself. It's where you start to look for it's when you start looking for dictionary definitions of words and stuff. What is a game? And once you start asking that, then I don't know. Perhaps that's not the right approach. Perhaps that's not the right question to be asking anyway.
This is a very linear story which you are walking through.
Yeah. So you could argue because you make
puzzle breaking it up.
Make no actual narrative decisions there. Then is that in fact just an interactive story? Blah blah blah. We end up getting lost in abstraction. And
if we're going to be doing that, then I'm claiming that for every Call of Duty.
You sort of end up missing, I suppose, what it is to actually. Is it? Can you even say play? Is play the word? Experience? We experience these things, and we don't play them anymore because.
Well, the whole experience thing, I think, is a lot more valid with some of the VR experiences, which do take the game ideas and turn them into something wholly new.
Yeah.
For 5 seconds.
Fair enough. It's interesting to see 2D games still being a thing these days.
Yeah, it's it is 2D, but it's got a lot of depth to it. So.
Fair enough.
So it's a very parallaxed in the background. But it's a very interesting game. If you like that kind of arty, lovely looking thing, brilliantly designed, and really want to see some of the best leg animation ever in a creepy kind of way at the end, then play it. Oh, also arm animation as well. Yeah. I'm not going to say what because it's a massive spoiler, but it's
not
worth
really what
that's
awfully specific. I don't specifically go out looking for detailed leg animation.
No, I recommend everyone goes out and has a look at this leg animation in this game and the arm animation and how
I think there's some kind
solving for walking and picking things up.
I think there's some sort of spoiler
fantastic.
you're trying not to spoil.
I'm really desperately trying not to spoil.
All right, we'll drop that and move on then, I think.
Okay, do you want to talk about what you've been doing for the last 6 years?
So I won. I did it. Regular listeners might remember me talking about me. Right, so I'm a big sci-fi, science fiction book reading nut, and I read lots of them. And a while ago, I came across this ambition that I decided as part of a bucket list because I'm getting on. I'm going to read all. I'm not dead yet. No, I'm just about getting there. Yes, I was going to read all of the Hugo Award winners for Best Novel since 1950, up to the current day. And presumably, if I can't manage to read one of them a year, I'm never going to do this. Yeah. So I read quite a lot of those and enjoyed a great many of them. And it's a fantastic way to discover new fiction if you're really at all into science fiction. This basically is, for the most part, a big list of what is the best science fiction ever. So it's a good place to start, a good place to go through reading, collecting and stuff. And then I thought, well, how can I up this? How can I up the ante here? How can I get even more involved? And I thought, well, I know, I'll see how about becoming a Hugo judge, and I am one now. For a surprisingly accessible, modest payment, I think $50 allows you to become a supporting member of Worldcon, which is the sci-fi body that dishes out the Hugo Award every year. And then they give you a whole load of online stuff. I didn't pay enough to be allowed to go to the actual Worldcon.
That's a long way away.
It's in Kansas this year, and lots of literary luminaries will be there soon or now or something. I don't know. I think it's going on now. But by the end of this month, in fact, which is today, I had, I don't know, I think I got about 4 months or no, what was it? It was 2 months. It wasn't a long time. 2 months, 6 weeks or something. Yeah. Yes, I had to go out and read 5 massive science fiction novels before the end of this month, and I managed to do it all. Now, some of these are real big door stoppers as well.
Are they all good?
Well, this is what surprised me, because there's been a lot. I mean, I talked lots on previous shows about all the weird politics that sprung up in recent years, about people trying to subvert the awards and so on. But all 5 of the nominations for the best Hugo novel of 2016 were all really good.
I should hope so.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
we covered before the whole it's really hard to gain that category.
Yeah, well, exactly. It's 40,000 words or more, so you've really got to have done. This will take people multiple years to write, and I don't know if you can just sit down and decide to write a Hugo entrant. You just write a book, you publish it, and then people nominate. Yeah. It's not like you submit your own work.
We can do technically.
But so there's about 3,500 Hugo judges worldwide, including yours truly, and we all had the opportunity to nominate any books we wanted. Now, I wasn't really in the position to see. For me, this is about discovery, not about pushing. Fans. I'm not a fan of a particular author that I thought needed to be included. So I just thought, no, I won't bother with nominations. I'll just see what everyone else nominates. But part of me was really worried that there was going to be a big sort of concerted mass push to get some awful, nightmarish protest work dumped in the category or something, and so that I'd end up with like 4 really good books and 1 stinker that I'd have to choke my way through 400 plus pages of really bad writing and really politically incorrect sentiment. But it turned out that no such thing happened, so that was really good. So when I sort of signed up for all that, you get a pin and a website and a password and everything, so you can go online and do the voting. Also, you get a voter pack. So I immediately rushed out and bought all 5 of these through Amazon and whatever. And some of them were hardback, some of them were 800 pages in hardback, and ended up having to be delivered in a big box that ended up left next door, so I had to go and talk to my neighbour. But it turned out that I didn't need to have done that, because you get a voter pack as well. You get access to a special part of the website with your voter number and password and stuff, and you can download in PDF form. 4 of them were excerpts, and 1 of them just did the whole novel as a PDF. So essentially, you certainly would have had enough free stuff. I mean, it's $50, and for that you get a voter pack, which is PDFs, or large PDFs of significant amounts of each of these works. So
I don't like the idea of enough of the book. I think the entire book
that was what I thought. I thought, you can pick and choose the best bit maybe, and then you're going to miss context. And the book I think should be judged as a whole. The entire thing is the thing being judged. So I went out and bought them all anyway. I don't regret buying any of them. They're all really good. So,
are you sure about that?
They are, yeah.
Okay.
You've read one of them. You're going to chip in, I'm sure.
I'm going to chip in, yeah. I have read one of them, and it actually is a good book, but I have issues with it.
Fair enough.
It's the book I think is going to win as well.
You reckon?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, so let's. So I'm just going to remind everyone, then, because I talked about it before. So the nominations were Jim Butcher with The Cinder Spires, The Aeronaut's Windlass, which I'll cover them all as we go. N.K. Jemisin, the 5th season. Anne Leckie, Ancillary Mercy. Naomi Novik, Uprooted, and Neil Stevenson's Seven Leaves. So those are the 5. They're all big books, but they're all big books, and they're all surprisingly different as well. I mean, we'll just do a quick rundown, go through what they are, which ones were which. So I think these are in alphabetical order. I'm looking at the Wikipedia website list there, and they're
probably completely wrong.
Well, no, they're right. I've read them all, but they're in authors alphabetical order. So no particular rankings there. So the Cinder Spires, Aeronaut's Windlass. So this was a big old roaring steampunk swashbuckling adventure set in I don't know. This I was talking earlier when we were talking about your game there about the idea of an alien setting gradually revealed through the eyes of the characters and stuff, and this is an absolutely really good example of this. You've got a population of pseudo-Victorian types who live in these things called the spires. There's many of them scattered around this mysterious world, and this world has got like a kind of death world surface. It's got breathable air, but the surface is shrouded in dense miles and miles of clouds, and they all live in massive sort of skyscraper spires, and each level of these spires is like a small city in itself, and this gives them all an excuse to be tooling around in flying airships and doing swashbuckling steampunk goggles and so on. So the it's very much an ensemble piece. You have a group of young adults who are all like joining up the Spire Arch's guard. The Spire Arch is like the ruler of each spire, and this particular Spire Albion, is the setting of the book, and they basically sort of join up to become a sort of kind of personal special forces unit under the sort of the auspices of the Spire Arch, who has got a kind of traditional non-executive sort of ceremonial power, a bit like our monarchy, really. There's a council that do the actual ruling, but he's decided he needs an actual hands-on unit to chase up on some suspicions he's been having. And then it immediately kicks off with this invasion from a neighbouring spire, who I think Spire Aurora they're called, and they've all got sort of Spanish and Italian sorts of names. It's quite clear they're sort of expies of sort of Victorian European powers at play going on there. And it's really good. There's all sorts of fun and games with crystals because they don't have any convenient sources of wood or coal, because the surface of this world is absolutely ultra nightmare hazardous, and no one goes down there except with very briefly. And sort of wood becomes this ultra rare precious commodity because it just costs people lives to get trees from the surface. So they do everything with crystals. It's all very sort of goggles and brass and stuff. Good steampunk stuff. I've never really gotten that into steampunk. I love the idea of steampunk and the aesthetics of it, but I've never really sort of tracked down any long-form works that cover it in any detail. So this is, in a way, my first real proper go at some of this stuff, and it's really good. There's a rollicking pace to it. It's a novel full of tropes. There's like the washed-out ex-naval officer who's the sort of I want to say Malcolm Reynolds character. I keep getting flashes of Firefly throughout it. It's sort of ensemble cast and their special ship going on adventures and stuff. And
every bit of sci-fi ever made then.
Well, yeah, so it's not just a Firefly thing clearly, but it's a format that sort of works. But I suppose the detail is in the characterizations, which is all very good. Very believable characters. They sort of stand up as tropes to begin with, but get fleshed out very early on. There's the sort of haughty aristocratic young woman who's learning to get on with the common people, and there's the washed out naval captain who's been wronged over a matter of honour and not drummed out of the fleet and is now running as a privateer with his ultra loyal crew. You got the sort of nervous youngster greenhorn first officer on his ship who's actually got a heart of gold and stuff, and you got cats. Far too many cats. I think if I had one criticism, it's the cats. The cats in this book are.
Is this book written by Focus Test?
Yes, it's like it's supposed to trying to tick off as many internet memes as possible. There's a certain hint of focus group about it. So the cats in this book live in this spire with the humans, and they are a wise and intelligent race of proud warriors, and certain humans are favoured by the cats, and some humans can. One girl who's one of the heroes of the book, she can actually speak cat and acts as a kind of interpreter stroke ambassador. I mean, I found myself getting, and one of the ensemble cast is indeed a cat, Raoul.
You may have lost me at cats.
I know. I found myself getting quite annoyed and irritated by the amount of emphasis on the cat's point of view, and the cat being, the hero cat is enormously self-conceited, like people imagine cats actually are.
Does he say fish a lot?
No, it's not. It's not even a comedy sort of Red Dwarf style of thing. It is literally a house cat that it has opinions and acts the smug hero the whole time, and is graciously allowing humans to look after it and blah blah blah. And I just thought, oh god. I mean, I like cats. Don't get me wrong. Cats are all right, but there is nothing going on behind those eyes. They just sit there. When a cat looks at you enigmatically, it's not thinking anything at all. It's just staring. Cats are fine. I like cats.
It's wondering when it's going to eat.
Yeah, exactly. Where's the next food? But so I mean, yeah, we could do with that. There's ethereal magic going on in this book as well. It's a very busy book. There's lots going on, which I quite liked. But yeah, some aspects of it tend to drag. There's some fantastic antagonists set up early on in the book. The book is, in fact, boldly proclaims itself to be volume 1 of ... but works as well as a self-contained story. See, I mean, we'll come to this as I talk about some of the other books as well. The idea of long-running volume works appearing in the Hugos is perhaps, a bit of a curse, I think. But this works well. I enjoyed it. It was good. It was a good roaring adventure story. I wondered if it was going to be full-on Hugo winning material in the conventional sense. sense, but definitely enjoyed it and probably would get sequels. Probably would read more about it. I came to quite like the characters mostly, and the sort of promise of further mysteries to be revealed in further works. I found myself wanting to certainly know more about the world. Is this even Earth? Where are we? It's not even sort of suggested that it's like the far future of Earth or
so far
Venus.
It does sound like an episode of Doctor Who.
It does feel a bit like that, but the detail and the nuance in the writing does sort of pull it up and makes it something more than just a sort of throwaway 42-minute story you'd see on a Saturday night. It has enough meat and substance to it, and the characterization's good that you'd want to read more about it, and it feels like it stands on its own world. So I enjoyed that a lot, actually. That's quite good. Good rollicking steampunk high seas type adventure there with cutlasses and pulse cannon, energy weapon, hand glove things, and it's all good stuff. There's a bit of everything going on in there, I think, and in some parts, I think you might be right. The idea that let's just draw up a massive tick list of things people on the internet like and try and get as many of them in here as we can. But it is skillfully woven together. I mean, Jim Butcher's also wrote the Dresden Files, which I've heard of but not read myself.
You should read them. They're meant to be very good. I haven't actually bothered reading them myself, or watched the TV show.
I've heard people say that they're good, so I might have to go back and check some of that out as well. But this seems to be his new thing anyway, and but I don't know how many future volumes we can expect. They typically come in threes, but you never know. All right, let's move on. So on to N.K. Jemison's The Fifth Season. So this is a kind of post-apocalyptic work. It's an interesting thing. It's set vastly in the future of a world. I don't know if it's meant to be Earth or not, but it's so far removed from the present day that even if it was, it wouldn't matter anyway. So this is a world a world racked by earthquakes. So we've got one massive continental map. Here's a map in the start.
Uh-oh.
So did the other one, actually, yeah.
Like books with maps
in the start. A lot of these did, actually. So the main continent's called the Stillness, which is an ironic name for a place that is racked by earthquakes on a nearly almost constant basis. And the book largely charts the efforts of civilization to just keep going in such a tumultuous setting. So the earthquakes come and go in phases, and every so often a massive load will come at once, and that's what's known as a fifth season, hence the title drop there. And the book follows three women in sort of three interweaving stories, three parallel stories. One of them is a young child who's been found out to have the powers of what they call an origene, which is essentially someone who has. I'm wondering how now I come to explain this to someone else. ... Basically, some humans in this setting have developed glands or organs at the back of the base of their skulls which can sense earth tremors and vibrations, and in some cases pull in energy from the surrounding air and ground and actually direct it down into the rocks. So basically they become earthquake whisperers. They can cause or still earthquakes and stuff. This power is a kind of mutation, and the people who develop it in childhood and for whom it's discovered get treated. Basically they just get killed, they get murdered. This is, it's the power of the origin is essentially regarded very much like witchcraft in history. It's feared, it's distrusted, and with good reason, because young babies who can suddenly cause massive earthquakes without controlling them at all can destroy villages and kill the entire population. So you've got this massive sort of pariah status, fear, suspicion thing going on, a persecuted minority who are essentially, I don't know, mutant humans of the distant future. Who knows? But so it's a sort of magic, kind of, but she's made a real sort of attempt to try and work it in as an everyday functional thing, rather than noble wizards wandering around with enigmatic powers. This is more like the sort of witchcraft, fear, suspicion, but there's also there's an empire at the centre of this continent who have managed to harness the power of these origins, and basically they round them up and take them back and train them in a kind of sort of indentured slavery kind of way. And then send them out to go and to maintain stability throughout the empire. So basically, this is how their civilization is run, on the backs of oppressed earthquake-sensitive humans who are generally treated as slaves. So you got a young child who's sort of only just been picked up by one of the Guardians, who are sort of this organisation who oversee the Fulcrum, which is the organisation of these earthquake stealers. Then you got Another story with a sort of mid-ranking member of this fulcrum lot who goes sent out on a job which goes spectacularly wrong, and she's sent along with a very high-ranking earthquake sensey person, and who's so far above, so far up in power that he can ignore some of the rules that all starts to leads a sort of journey of discovery about what the organisation's really about, and that's quite interesting. And then you've also got, and this is an interesting one, the third woman in the story. This is a story, part of the story that's told in second-person narrative, which you don't see a lot anywhere really. Basically, you see that in game books and adventure games. You do this, you see there are entrances around you. So basically, you've got a whole third of the story told in the second-person perspective, which I'm not sure I've ever seen really. I think I might have saw it in an Ian Banks novel once, which was again quite unsettling, quite odd. I can't remember which one it was. Might have been Complicity, but so that was quite strange. Anyway, she has just you, as it turns out, you've just come home to find that your husband has murdered your baby because your baby was developing these weird earthquake powers again, and then scarpered from the village, the com that you live in, and so. And of course, all that time you'd been hiding the powers yourself. You've got these powers, but had managed to successfully hide them and grow into adulthood. And so that's part of the story. Then sort of leads to a kind of road trip where she goes off to try and avenge the child by finding the husband to, I don't know, presumably kill him. So you've got these three different stories all going on, and again, it's quite grim, it's quite bleak, it's there's a lot of harshness in this world, there's a lot of man's inhumanity to man, and a lot of it is actually justified by the surroundings and the times and the awful powers that are going on as well. So it's quite an uncomfortable read in places, but very well told and quite expansive. I mean, again, it's this whole... wow, what is this world about? Every now and then you get told about these massive floating obelisks, these floating obelisk gemstone things that are just like a mile up and just drifting around the landscape, and they come up and become part important as well. And you're thinking, well, what the hell's that all about? And just wanting to learn more about the world and the people in it is very compelling. And this is another good example of that. So yeah, and I'm still not sure if I'm still trying to work out. I'm trying not to spoiler these as I go because obviously they're very new novels, but still not quite sure I know really what's going on at the end of the first one. Again, this one is again boldly advertised as volume 1 in the such and such saga, so there'll be sequels. Well, again, this one doesn't stand nearly so well as a self-contained story, because it seems like a lot of it is setting up. It seems to be just setting up characters for further adventures, which don't actually happen in the book. So that seems to me, it's not something you've done on purpose, is it? Because you don't write volume 1 of a massive trilogy and then also just chuck it off to be into the Hugo. You're telling a very long story. Presumably you've got your outline over many books, and you get on with it.
Yeah. I have my doubts.
Yeah. But so yeah, I don't know. I liked it. I think it was good. It's very interesting, well written, very powerful. I'll come to the rankings at the end anyway. What I gave everything. So, on to the next one. This is Anne Leckie's Ancillary Mercy. Now, this one I had problems with. I have read, so let's see, in 2014, Anne Leckie won with Ancillary Justice. I think Ancillary Sword was nominated in 2015, and now this is Ancillary Mercy. So, there's a theme there. They are all literally books in a series.
I'm going to be really, really hypocritical in a bit, aren't I?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I am, yeah.
So this is the third book in the Ancillary sequence, which follows the adventures of Breck, who is a detached humanoid. Oh, they're called ancillaries. This is the sort of key thing to this whole universe. It's a kind of Banksian far future setting. Where spaceships have AIs controlling them, and they're super intelligent uber computers, a bit like a lot of the culture stuff. But with this one, you've got these ships operate things called ancillaries, which are previously dead humanoid. I think they're humans, I guess. Previously dead humans with stuff done to them, literally turned into kind of remote-controlled zombie operator presences, remote telepresences for the ships. It's a kind of grim process that at the start, I think towards the end of the first book, starts to get decommissioned as inhumane anyway, and very much. I think they're meant to sort of parallel. Is meant to sort of evoke evoke thoughts about child slavery, about child soldiers, that sort of thing, indentured conscript warrior, soldiers and that kind of thing. Anyway, so the one that won the 2014 Hugo, Breck is introduced as a character who essentially is one of these sort of remote control trooper types whose ship gets destroyed, and she finds that she's suddenly got free will again and has no actual controlling ship, and so off she goes to try and. I mean, the 2014 winner, Ancillary Justice, I think, is actually quite good and a justifiable winner, because it's a sort of whodunit, her trying to figure out who killed the ship, which she sort of identifies as herself, because she shared a consciousness with it until the ship was destroyed. So she's the only remaining fragment of the ship's consciousness, I suppose, and goes off on this big journey to try and uncover the murderer. And that was very good. It was a good self-contained story, quite interesting. A lot of interesting sort of science fiction, big stupid objects, and wow factor and interstellar stuff. I didn't read the next one, and now here I am with the third one, and this is a real problem, because this is volume 3 in a trilogy. I've only read the first one of them. Most judges may not have even read the first one. It really relies on the reader having read the first two. There's a lot of previously ... and there's not a lot of recap exposition, because I suppose really that's a terrible thing to be writing if you're doing it as a trilogy. Anyway.
There is an argument that you should always write your trilogies in a way where you can jump in at any point, because you never know when you're going to pick something
But that's
up.
going to irritate your regular readers who've reading it cover to cover.
Do it right.
Yeah, I suppose there's a skill to it, but yeah, you don't want every fifth paragraph to be, as you know ... and then a recap. You just need to crack on with it. Problem I'm having with Ancillary, whatever this one is, that's a problem. The names don't even stick in my mind. This one is Ancillary Mercy, yes, and it's essentially Breck has washed up as the sort of de facto military governor of a star system in an empire that's in a sort of civil war and tearing itself apart, because the leader of the empire, it was an absolute autarch who actually managed to distribute their own consciousness across multiple bodies in a similar way to the Ancillaries work. But towards the end of the first book, the one in 2014, that it gets revealed that this Ananda Minai character, who is the sort of leader of the empire, is at war with itself. A large number of its own sort of multiple personalities have detached and started to essentially have a civil war with the other lot, and that sort of shakes out into massive ructions across the main empire as well. And so Breck's sort of in charge of this military governor of this star system with a really big populous star base and a busy agricultural planet, and trying to hold them together and trying to steer them a narrow course through the fractions of partisanship in this civil war. She's just trying to look out for the best interests of the locals, whilst being beset upon by very many different sides. And there's some action in it, and there's some bits of space battles and stuff, but mostly it is her just sort of trotting around this starbase and planet, talking to various people and having tea. My God, the amounts of tea that are had in this series of books is kind of, I guess it's a running joke. It's their civilization uses tea for everything, and I'm trying to work out if it's a euphemism or a metaphor or what, but they're always sitting down to have a tea ceremonies. Tea in the sort of Oriental tea ceremony sense, rather than nice cup of tea the way we do it. So, and there's all these lavish descriptions of ornate tea sets and characters apologising for having the wrong sort of tea and stuff, and it is humorous, but it does bog down a bit. To be honest, the problem I'm having with this is that it feels like a breather chapter. It feels like a lull in a much grander story. Yeah. And I remember the first book being a lot more fast-paced and action-paced, and it's not even about space battles and gun battles and stuff. It's more just developments, pace, things happening. And this one, it really does feel, there's a few bits and pieces going on here and there, and at the end there's a sort of bit of a shift in power and politics of it all, which could be interesting, but again feels to me like setting up for the next one. It's like, and these ones aren't even advertised as book 2 in the whatever trilogy. This is just that this is an open-ended thing, I think, and they're good, and taken as a whole, I think they're probably quite good. But as a standalone Hugo entry, I just had trouble with this one, really. I mean, it was all right, but I'm having trouble remembering salient points from it, which is not good. That defeats the point, really. So yeah, I don't know. I think she's a great author, and I think the concept and the world are fantastic. The Ancillary universe, or whatever you call it, is good. But I'd probably need to go back and get the second one and then read all three in one go. That might be better. As a standalone Hugo thing, not so great. You know, and that's interesting. Sort of trying to work out what makes a good Hugo book and what doesn't. You can have really good sort of series, but should they be taken as a single volume? Because that's essentially what's being judged
Good
here.
question.
Yeah, because she's already won. Already won in 2015 and was nominated. Won in 2014, nominated 2015, nominated 2016. I imagine when there's a sort of rousing finale book for this series, it'll probably win that year's award. Okay, so on to Naomi Novik's Uprooted. This is a kind of dark fairy tale fantasy thing.
Okay,
which is interesting entry. I mean, I sometimes wonder. I mean, this I suppose is part of the beef that these puppy types have with the novel category, is that every so often a fantasy one will get in under the radar and make everyone quite cross. I really liked this one. It was charming, intelligent, witty. So it's basically it details the travails of Agnieszka, who is a young village girl in the valley. The valley is surrounded by the wood, capital T, capital W, which is a horrific nightmare, fairy tale, grim forest that has a malevolent purpose and all manner of creatures and foot troopers. And it's I mean, as you read through, you're thinking less, oh dear, witches in a cottage in the wood. And I mean, you're thinking more greater power of chaos from 40k. This thing really messes up. Every so often it has pulses, it has incursions into the valley, and whole villages will disappear into the woods. And some of the body horror descriptions of what happens to some of the villagers is this is not a Disney adaptation by any sense or stretch. But the wood is held at bay by the powers of the dragon, who is actually not a dragon, is actually a human wizard, who goes by the name of the dragon. He lives in a tower in the village, in the valley, and by his powers keeps the wood at bay, so everyone in the valley can live their lives. So every 10 years, he takes one of the girls from the village to his tower, and keeps them for 10 years, and after which he lets them go. And when they come back out, they say he didn't mess with them or anything, but they are suddenly very independently spirited and very, very quickly leave the valley and just go off and live productive lives out in the rest of the kingdom, which is a very peripheral presence and doesn't come into things.
So basically, he gives them a good formal education.
Gives them probably, yeah. I was initially envisaging a kind of My Fair Lady type Rex Harrison thing going on there, but anyway, so the choosing comes up. And Agnieszka's one of the village girls there to be chosen, and everyone in the village thinks that her best friend, who's super popular and good looking and everything, will be chosen, and actually it turns out she gets chosen. I saw that coming, and so off she goes, and it turns out that she's been picked because she's got the craft, she's got the magic power. And so the sort of first main part of the book is essentially her being trained and learning powers from this wizard. And the dynamic between these two characters is fantastic. He's this ultimate sarcastic, bitter, sort of almost Alan Rickman type whereas she's this fantastically klutzy, bumbling, incompetent, but not in a sort of whoops giggling kind of way. But she spends most of the time terrified out of her wits from a man who's clearly not going to do any harm to her, and that sort of sends her off into causing all sorts of quite severe catastrophes and so on. Anyway, she sort of learns her power, and over the rest of the book it's about the pair of them developing strategies and counter feints to the wood, which is growing in more and more power and threatening to destroy everything and everyone. And the sheer ferocity with this otherwise inanimate forest is portrayed with is really effective and well done. And it's the relationship between Agnieszka and the dragon as well is a really sort of fun thing to watch develop as well. I mean, initially it turns out that they've sort of stumbled upon this advanced form of magic which is largely powered by unresolved sexual tension, as far as I can tell. Okay. So, well, it's sort of there's almost like Ursula K. Le Guin themes of complementary magic, men's magic and women's magic, that kind of thing, and that sort of thing's explored. The sort of dynamic there as well. I could see people might find issues being examined in this book, but I didn't mind and I quite enjoyed it, so that was all right. No, I really liked it. It's really, really self-contained, solid story that and with a satisfying resolution, but genuine loss and threat and peril and all sorts of excitement all the way through as well. And yeah, I normally go. I mean, initially you're sort of reading through and thinking, "Oh God, this will turn up in a Pixar Studio Disney thing in 10 years' time." But then you get further and you think, "Oh bloody hell, no, no, it won't." So yeah, I really enjoyed it actually, and that surprised me a lot because I was sort of looking at the cover and reading the first couple of chapters, thinking, "Is this going to be some sort of Grimm's fairy tales thing?" Which is really not my thing, to be honest. I mean, I'm not saying that I have to have spaceships and laser swords in my novels to enjoy them, but it helps. But this was really good. I really liked it a lot. It was a surprise too. That was the thing. So, yes. So on to the last one then. God, how long have I been going? This has been a bumper show, isn't it? All right,
15 minutes, yeah.
So Neil Stephenson's Seven Eves. This was a massive doorstopper, 800 pages. This is very much a contemporary sci-fi. Scientist is the hero, engineers versus the catastrophe type of thing. Your setup begins with something that is never really satisfactorily explained anywhere throughout the book.
Should I point out this is the one I have read?
Yes. Yeah. Are you gonna? You're right. Go on then.
Yeah.
Jump in when you have something to say. Anyway, there's something called they're calling the agent. Basically, the first sentence of the book is I can't remember what it was now, but basically it says the moon blew up. Yeah. And that's basically it. That is the story. The story is what happens if the moon just suddenly detonates and it's set in the present day, or slightly ahead, a couple of years in the future, whatever. And yeah, if the moon just suddenly shattered and blew up into 7 large pieces, what would happen to us? How would we cope? What the hell would go on? And it doesn't go well. Let's put it that way.
It repeatedly doesn't go well.
Repeatedly doesn't go well. Anyway, so the book's then divided into essentially 3 main sections. The first section is the work. It plays out a bit like Armageddon, your traditional, your classic sort of noughties disaster movie. Here comes the asteroid, but it turns out that there isn't a Bruce Willis and a nuclear bomb that can just sort it all out. So they basically work out very early on that they've got 2 years before the repeated gravitational collisions of the fragments of the moon, smashing them into smaller and smaller and smaller bits, will eventually cause something called the hard rain, which will destabilise the particles of the moon's bolides, they keep calling them. It will all just dump into the atmosphere and come down as burning meteors.
And that ends really badly for anyone who happens to be living on the planet.
Well, the hard rain, yeah, exactly. The hard rain is then immediately followed by what they call the white sky, which is basically means the fragments of the moon falling into the Earth's atmosphere repeatedly and in such vast numbers would superheat the atmosphere and sterilise the Earth. And they work out that they've got about 2 years to do whatever they're going to do before this happens. And so the first book is essentially a lot of small character studies. A lot of them are introductory pieces, but also we get to meet characters who we'll never meet again.
Yeah.
This is very much it's almost a sort of tried and tested formula in science fiction writing. The tales of the last days of the Earth. The oh God, there's an unstoppable apocalypse coming. There's almost a sort of John Wyndham feel to some of it, and you've got this whole society who've got nowhere to go. There's literally no way to escape this, except we think we can save some people by sending them into space. And all throughout this first section, you're trying to work out who actually believes this plan's going to work, or is this just some make busy work to stop everything going crazy too early? So anyway, the main action focuses on, and this sort of goes into the second part. Obviously, the event happens. There is it's not much of a spoiler to say that it isn't avoided or averted or reversed. So the middle part of the book is them dealing with the actual days of the catastrophe itself, and the big plan is to try and get a load of people up into the ISS, which is Izzy as it's called in this book, and Izzy really is the main star, I think. The ISS in this timeline has a large captured asteroid bolted to the front of it, which sort of helps them to sort of ward off a lot of the incoming radiation and incoming missiles and so on, the incoming bits of moon. But essentially is the ISS that's up there now, but with just sort of a large chunk of rock on one end. And there's some sort of early experimentation into robots and sort of self-assembly robots going on, a little bit of nanotech maybe. But it's not sort of distant sci-fi stuff. This is all things that potentially could sort of be real in this day and age, and they're having to sort of use their wits and their initiative to try and get as many people up onto the ISS as they can, and then use these really cheap throwaway space rocket habitat booster tank things to try and get I think about 10,000 of humankind up into orbit, where they're hopefully going to sort of manage to ride out the worst of it. And they reckon it'll take several thousand years before the temperatures and the white sky will deteriorate back to the point where you could feasibly live on the Earth again. So already it's a big ask. It's we're going to try and save 10,000 people for 5,000 years in orbit in little tin cans in a totally self-contained system that totally won't break down or anything. And many of the characters in the book are sceptical that it's ever going to work at all as well. And then so you got that. The main part of the story deals with the days of that, and it gets into the sort of, it almost felt like Kim Stanley Robinson in places.
Yeah.
That sort of engineers dealing with problems and moving the species forward type of thing. And there was a bit of Alistair Reynolds to it. I'm thinking Pushing Ice particularly. I don't know if you've read that one. That's a near future one.
There's a lot of Greg Bear in there as well.
Yes, that too. But it's really good. It is absolutely sort of centre of the lane of what I'd consider science fiction literature. It really does. If you're looking to sort of tick the box for the most Hugo-ish type of book, I think probably this would be it. But then you got this weird sort of third part of the book, which is set 5,000 years later. And I don't want to talk about it too much because obviously major story spoilers relating to it. But it really feels tacked on.
You see, this is where I'm going to get really hypocritical.
Go on then, yeah. Because you've actually read this one, haven't you?
I've been saying for all the others that, look, it's part of a trilogy.
Yeah.
This needed to be a trilogy. The first bit is fantastic. The bit when they're getting up into space, trying to deal with everything, is brilliant.
Yeah, there's that sense of adversity but hope, and that sense of ticking off problems, and oh no, this has gone wrong now.
Yeah.
But we can do this, and that's the best of science fiction.
Yeah,
I think, is human beings solving problems.
And then it rushes through a transitional bit. And then it rushes through this is how it all ends up bit.
Yeah.
And both of those other two bits needed more meat on those bones.
Yeah. Particularly the sort of distant finale section, which you'd expect. I've seen that technique used in quite a lot of novels, but often it's just one chapter. It's not a whole third of the book, and absolutely there is at least 2 or 3 books worth of material in there.
There are whole subplots which are set up at the start.
Yes,
which get sort of resolved in seconds.
Yeah,
what happened to this? What happened then? Doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. It's a real. I don't know. I suppose the pacing of the whole thing does sort of reflect the events going on at the time in the book, though. I mean, you got this sort of steady build-up thing, and then it all goes mad in the middle, and then there's this, and afterwards, what happens here? So it's difficult to talk about without massively spoilering it all. But I have to say, it does self-spoiler itself somewhat. The title, for example, you can have a fair old guess at what that actually means.
It's about roofs, isn't it?
It's about roofs, yes. But also, the hardback copy I got comes with a whole load of maps in the sort of colour plates at the start and end of it all, with illustrations and stuff, like conceptual art of some of the bits of kit talked about and so on, which is all very nice. But one of them has a map of how things are in the end bit with a whole load of designations, which utterly spoil the early part. And of course, you got through that. If they'd put that in the end plate instead of in the front plate, I may not have noticed it. But once I'd got that, I was then looking at those names in that map and then looking for the names in the main text, and that sort of ruined it a bit. But on the whole, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a fantastic. I know. See, I don't want to get into all the puppies politics again, but for me, this really was a very Hugo book.
Yeah.
And whether for ill or for better or for worse, I suppose, perhaps that's what a lot of this current campaigning is about. We're trying to decide what Hugo books should be, but up until now, I think this is very much.
This is an incredibly Hugo book, which happens to be about a certain number of people of one gender.
Well, yeah, I mean, and a lot of what goes on inside it as well is quite politically correct as well, if you're really looking out for that kind of thing. But I really enjoyed it. So I enjoyed all 5 of these. How do I think do you want to know the voting then?
What
I went with? So basically the voting is that you put them in numerical order. It's a sort of proportional representation thing, or transferable, whatever. It's not, so you don't just pick one, you rank them. So the way I ranked mine was I went in reverse order. Ancillary Mercy, which is a shame because I wanted that to be better. I wanted because I liked Ancillary Justice, but as a standalone work, it's a quiet phase in an otherwise rollicking story.
Yeah.
I imagine the next 2 or 3 will be brilliant, particularly how Ancillary Mercy ends. It sets up for a massive ding-dong in future novels, and I'm looking forward to that. But for this year, I don't think it was the one, no. So I put that 5th. I think I went with the 5th season as 4th place, just because it was hard work, really. I mean, and interesting in places, and there's touches of a fascinating world, but there was so much bitterness in all the characters, and such a sort of, so you almost sort of felt that it was a world that perhaps deserved to be constantly destroyed by earthquakes constantly, because everyone was so miserable all the time. I don't know, perhaps one chicken and egg, but so then I was really torn between Uprooted and Cinder Spires, the Aeronauts Windless. They were both. If I could have put them both as second, I would have done so.
I'm not very good at maths.
Yes.
But I suspect I'm going to get angry at you in a bit. But yeah, you go.
Yes. Well, I went with... So I put Uprooted third and the Cinder Spires second in the end. Just because the compelling characters and excellent world building in Cinder Spires was really good, and I'm looking forward to second one of those. I mean, Uprooted was by no means worse. It was very good and excellent as a self-contained story. I think just slightly edged out by the awesome steampunk flying steam galleons,
Yeah.
So I went with Seven Eves for my number one choice in the end, because it just so reminded me of so many solid science fiction doorstoppers I've read in the past, and particularly I'm thinking of the Red Mars stuff. It really very reminiscent of Kim Stanley Robinson's style for that, and it dealt with epic adventure, epic science, human species survival, which is always a fantastic theme, and just the pacing of it all and the characters. I mean, perhaps you may not have enjoyed the characterization, and
some of the characters I really liked. Some of their decisions along the way were baffling.
Yeah. I mean, there was a certain element of what? Why are you doing that, you idiots? But then that sort of fit with their characters, which is the thing. It was an entirely consistent thing that character probably would have done, rather than just some bonkers idea the author had suddenly come up with and wasn't really thinking through. No, it was really good. And I think the end bit probably could have been hived off and not needed to have been there, maybe, or had its own book, but it's interesting. I suppose you had to see where it all went. And to be honest, the end bit seemed to me like a massive excuse for Stevenson to just go mad inventing massive, stupid space structures, because there's a lot of lavish descriptions of some really bonkers stuff in there. You think space elevators are nuts? You should try seeing some of the things he comes up with in there. So I went with that in the end, so there we go. I didn't bother voting any other categories.
Really?
The whole lot was there, but I didn't think it was fair because there was no category in which I'd actually seen all five other things.
Not even the short stories?
Not even the short stories, no. I didn't read the dinosaur butt sex thing because I thought that was stupid.
Yeah.
See, so there you go. I mean, I almost had a pop at the film category because I'd seen 3 of them, but I hadn't seen the other 2, so I didn't think it was fair. I'm very much about doing this properly, because there's too much nonsense going on with it as it is already,
Yeah. Well, for what it's worth, I think that Seven Eves is going to win, because I read it before the nominations came out, and as I read it, my thoughts were, this is going to win the Hugo, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
I don't want to use Hugo bait as a bad term, but it really is Hugo bait.
Well, Hugo bait implies that somebody sat down with a specific intention to win a Hugo when they, sat down at the typewriter or whatever. And I don't think you can do that.
It's such a perfect Hugo book.
It is a very traditional Hugo thing, yeah. But I in terms of the politics of it all, I don't see that it's an egregious novel in the sense that it, tramples all over women as equal partners or minorities or anything like that, because a lot of that stuff features in Seven Eves as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, you could consider it to be the most conservative right wing of the novels on offer, but many of the novels are quite left wing indeed. So I don't know. I don't know that those sorts of considerations are particularly relevant. No, I hope not anyway. I'd voted with the ones I liked, and that's why. So there you go. Yeah. So I've really enjoyed it, though. I mean, I would heartily recommend that people go out and buy all 5, to be honest, if you want a good read. They're all very good in their own way. It's just some are slightly better than others, which is, no problem.
So are you going to repeat the experience next year?
I certainly will, and I'm going to try and make an effort to be cognizant of more categories next time. I think I can find it in me to watch 5 films in a year.
You can. Also, the short stories. You really should try this.
The short stories, yeah. Maybe the novellas. I mean,
maybe the graphic novels.
I don't know. I just don't feel that I have an expertise. I feel like at this stage in my life, having read so many, I've got a bit of an expertise, or at least an understanding of science fiction novels, but I just continue to fail to get graphic novels. We'll have to talk about that another time, perhaps. But yeah. I'd recommend. I don't know if I'd recommend that everyone. I think you've got to be fairly committed and even say obsessed to stump up $50 just to vote on an online poll. But I don't know. I've certainly enjoyed following the list, and I'd recommend that next time round. I think if even if you don't want to stump up and have a go at the voting and be a part of it yourself, certainly just go into Wikipedia's list of nominees and buying one of each and having a go, because they're all consistently of a high standard. That was the surprising thing. I thought there'd be 2 or 3 really good ones and at least 2 lemons in there, two awful things that just got in there somehow. But it seems the nominating process, certainly for the novel category, it works as intended.
Yeah.
It works to highlight very good, strong science fiction of a modern calibre. I'm very pleased to have done it. Very good. I enjoyed that. Wow, I'm all talked out.
Yeah.
Have you got anything you want to say?
No, we're at an hour, so I think we should probably stop there.
All right.
It seems like books are a good idea for this. We should do more books.
Yes, we should probably talk about some more books at some point.
Yeah, so if you want to join us in a couple of weeks, we'll be talking about more games, I think, and then possibly more books.
Yeah.
You can go along to howtobadtime.com where you can see all our previous episodes.
Yep.
You can go along to YouTube where you can like this video, subscribe to it if you want, and again see all our other stuff. And I must put some more content up there because it needs some more interesting stuff. You can also see us on Twitter and other places where we may or may not actually notice. And if you want to contact us in a more Let's Play Gamesy kind of way, go along to our website, have a look at the Slack link or the Steam group link, and go along to there and say hi.
Yeah, we've got a Minecraft server on the go. Talk to Days about that, and also we've got the tabletop simulator thing. We played Secret Hitler this week.
I heard.
Which was quite harrowing. I'll talk about that another time. Yeah. But works well. But blimey. If you want to find any of the books I've been talking about, go to Wikipedia and just type in list of Hugo award winners.
And scroll down to 2016.
Scroll down to 2016. They're all there, and then you can probably find that through your Amazon.com of choice. So with that, we'll see you next time.
Goodbye.